Welcome to That Board Game Show. My name is Hein van Heerden, and today we are going to take an in-depth look at Pandemic. Pandemic is a cooperative game where you and your team members play together against the board. Let me show you how to set up Pandemic from the start. Right here, I have my board laid out and my various components. So I take my rule book and I go and see how to start. Step 1. Lay out the table, board, as well as the various cubes that you're going to be using during the game. These cubes over here are disease cubes. They are going to be representing the 4 viruses that you are trying to cure. Step 2, place the outbreak markers and the cure markers. So my outbreak marker is this little symbol here, and it goes onto my outbreak track. The outbreak marker, you are going to be moving down this track every time an outbreak takes place. I'll explain to you a little bit later how outbreaks happen. But you are trying to not have too many outbreaks, because if you move down this track and you reach the end, that will signal the end of the game, and you and your team would not have cured the world of the viruses. The next thing is the cure markers. The cure markers are these 4 little markers, each representing the different viruses. So they're going to go in the bottom of the table, each representing the 4 different colors. This is how you can win the game. If the objective of the game is to cure these viruses, and every time you succeed in curing one of them, they move off that marker and block the symbols above them. If you can manage to get all 4 cured, that signals the winning scenario of the game. At the same time, these markers also have on the other side a eradication symbol. Now, this symbol means that you've managed to eradicate that particular virus off the world. Again, I'll explain to you later how we get to that scenario. Next, we're going to put up the research stations. Now, you start the game with 1 research station in Atlanta. You always start in Atlanta because Atlanta is where the center of disease control is currently in the world. So you always start with 1 research station. During the progress of the game, you can build more research stations wherever you feel like it. But at the beginning of the game, you always start in Atlanta. This is followed by placing the various cards on the table. You have 2 sets of decks of cards. The first one being an infection deck, okay, which is going to come over here. And the second deck, which is your city cards, which you're going to be placing on this square, but not quite yet. We have to set up our city deck later first. The next step is to place the infection marker, which is this little symbol here. Place the infection marker on this infection track, and then infect 9 cities. Now, you always start off by infecting 9 cities at the beginning of the game, and then as you progress, more cities and things would get infected, but a little bit on that a little bit later. To start affecting the first 9 cities, you take the first card and flip it over, look at where it is, in this case Lagos, and you put 3 disease cubes of that color in that city. So Lagos is going to get 3 yellows. This card goes into your disinfect deck discard pile. The next one is Riyadh. Riyadh is black, and he's going to get 3 cubes again. And the third one is San Francisco, which is blue, and he's going to get 3 cubes. The next stage of the game, you're going to be turning over another 3 cards, but you're only going to be infecting them with 2 cubes this time around. So this is Mexico City. It's going to be yellow. Mexico City gets there. Next, I have Sao Paulo, which is going to be 2 yellows as well. And next one's also a yellow one, which is Lima, which is going to get 2 cubes. The third stage of this setup of the infections, you're only going to put down 1 cube for each card that you draw. But again, you draw 3 cards. So we have Atlanta, which is going to get 1 cube, which is going to be a blue. You draw Bangkok, which is going to be red, our first little red that's come out. And you're going to draw Buenos Aires, another yellow. We've got a lot of yellows on this game. Right, so that was stage 3, where you set up the various infection cards and infection viruses across the board. Step 4, you are going to take your player cards, shuffle them, and hand them out face up to each of your players that's playing. Now, this is a 2 to 4 player game, so you will give each player 1 card face up. You shuffle them because each of these player cards have different abilities, and you need to read what each of these abilities are on the cards before you start playing the game. So first face up, I will give myself the dispatcher, and I'll give my assistant the researcher card. The remaining cards get put off to one side, and you won't go through them right now. To understand exactly what each of these role player cards do, you can always refer to the very back of your manual, and you'll see each of the researcher cards depicted and their roles. But they're also depicted on the actual cards themselves. And what's written here will probably make more sense as you start playing the game. For example, the researcher says, as an action, you can give any city card from your hand. You must both be in the same city, and the card does not have to match the name of the city that you are in. So it doesn't quite make sense when you're starting off for the first time playing Pandemic, but as you progress, you will see how all these different actions mean more to you. So that was setting up the 4 cards. Next, you are going to be handing each player an action card. So these action cards here are basically a little cheat sheet that shows you the different movement actions and other actions that you can take. And these will allow you to not have to refer to the manual every single time during the course of the game. Next, you are going to give yourself player cards, city cards from this deck, which we haven't moved yet. And the number of cards that you give each player is dependent on the number of players. So in the rules, it will tell you that if there's 2 players playing, you need to get 4 cards each. I just have 2 players, so I'm going to give them 4 cards each. Obviously, you would have shuffled these city cards before you started. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4 for each player. And then I'm going to put it back on the side because I still have to do something to those decks and set them up. That's stage 4. Stage 5 is where you now prepare these city card decks. Now, the way you prepare it is based on how difficult you want to make this game. You have these various epidemics that can come out. Now, epidemics increase the intensity of the game as you are playing it. And the more epidemics you have in your city deck, the more difficult the game is. I would recommend you always start off with 4 epidemics in your hand. And when you've managed to master Pandemic, you can go up to having 6. So firstly, you would take the remaining city cards that you've got in your hand, and you would separate them into 4 piles. Just before I do that, I have to take the event cards and shuffle them into the city deck pile as well. Now, event cards are very handy because event cards can be played at any time, but they allow additional free actions that you can take. That doesn't cost you your 4 actions that you're going to see later on in the game. But so these event cards are very handy. And as my wife always says, play the event cards whenever you have them. Don't hang on to them. Play them because they certainly help you throughout the game. So I'm going to take these event cards and just slot them into these city cards first before I shuffle the whole lot up. And now I'm going to prepare this deck based on the number of epidemics I'm going to be placing inside it. And I've decided I was going to go with 4. So I just separate this stack into 4 piles. It's got to be 4 even piles of cards, because you'll notice that I'm going to be putting 1 epidemic on each of these 4 piles. You notice that I've got one extra on this pile. It doesn't matter. The point is that you've got 4 separate piles, because now I'm going to take 4 epidemics and I'm going to put one on top of each of these 4 little piles. Then I'm going to take each pile randomly, shuffle that pile up without looking and seeing what's inside it, and put it on the play deck area over there. Take the next one, shuffle that up. So what you can see is the various epidemics are inside these city cards, but they are very evenly distributed to allow you at least some time to be able to progress through the game before you strike another epidemic. And as I said, the more experience you get in the game, you're allowed to go up to 6 epidemic cards that you can put in. Right, that was stage 5. Finally, we are ready to start playing. So based on your character cards that came out, you will take the pawns representing those and you will put them into Atlanta. As I said, you always start in Atlanta because that's where the center of disease control is now. Now, how you play is that you are going to be doing 4 actions, drawing 2 cards, and then infecting your cities. You do not have to refer to it always on the rule book, because it's also printed for you on the bottom end of the board over here. Do 4 actions, draw 2 cards, and then you can infect the different cities. Pandemic is a cooperative game, so you always reveal your hand that you got dealt so that everybody can see exactly what you have. I'll move all the rest of these unused tokens to the side, keep my research stations, and move there. And my second player will have her cards over there and there. So in my hand is my character card and my city cards. These city cards represent the different cities on the world map. Now, your hand limit is 7 cards. So during the course of the game, you're going to be drawing cards at the end of your turn into your hand. And if you exceed 7, you must discard always back down to 7 before you finish your round. Let's now discuss the reference card and the different actions that can take place on the reference card. The first side of the actions are referencing movement and all the different ways that you can move from one location to the next. The first one is drive ferry. Now, drive ferry would be where you follow one of these printed lines on the map. So, for example, my researcher can move from Atlantis to Miami because there is a line connecting the two. She will not be able to move from there directly to San Francisco. You have to follow according to line. That is the first action, a drive. The second action is direct flight. Now, direct flight is where you would discard the card to move to the city mentioned on that card. So if I want to move from there, my researcher wants to move from Atlanta to Ho Chi City, they would discard this card into the discard pile and then be able to fly directly through to Ho Chi City. The third action is a chartered flight. Now, chartered flight works a little bit different in that if you're in a city that you have the card for, in this particular case, the researcher is in Hong Kong, and I have the Hong Kong card, I can discard the Hong Kong card and I can fly to any city I want to in the world. So you must have the city card for the city that you are currently in. So she's going to fly from Hong Kong to Los Angeles, for example. The third action is to travel or shuttle between research stations. Now, this action only becomes available when there's more than one research station on the board. So let's say, for example, we had a research station in Delhi. Then my dispatcher would be able to travel from this research station to that research station as one action. You have to be at a research station, so my little research lady over here can't do that kind of action to move. The flip side of the action reference card shows you what you can do at the various locations that you travel to. The first one is building of a research station. Now, in order to build a research station in a specific city, like if I want to build one in Cairo, I have to have the city card representing the city I am in. So only if I'm in Cairo and I've got the Cairo card can I discard this card to the discard pile and build a new research station there. The second action is treat a disease. Now, treat a disease is where you move to a location where there's various diseases, and you treat a disease by removing one disease cube per action. As you can tell, there are 4 different actions that you are going to be executing on your turn. So you can have one action to move to the city and then 1, 2, 3 more actions to remove 3 disease cubes, because every single disease cube gets taken off with one action. Except if you're the medic, and that's where this character card comes out. If you read the character card of the medic, which is this little dude, you would be able to remove all the disease cubes because that's a special ability that he has. So read your special abilities printed at the bottom of the character cards, and that will tell you where and when you can use them. The third action here is trading knowledge. Now, trading knowledge is a little bit tricky in that you and the person you'd like to trade with both have to be in the same city for the card that you currently possess. So in this case, it's Bangkok. So both of you have to be inside Bangkok with each other before the researcher can take the Bangkok card and hand it over to the dispatcher. All right. Both must be inside the same city. And then lastly is discovering a cure. Now, to discover a cure, you need 5 city cards of the same color. So if I was wanting to discover red, for example, I would have to have 5 red cards that I could take and put into the discard pile in order to discover a cure. And in discovering a cure, I move the cure marker up 1 slot from its position. And remember, that's how we're trying to win the game, by finding cures for all of these diseases. The trick, however, is that you have to do this at a research station. Any research station, doesn't have to be Atlanta, any research station on the board, but you have to be present at a research station in order to hand in your 5 cards to find that cure. So that is how you basically set up the board and how what the reference card means. Let me do a simple playthrough of a few rounds on Epidemic. Now, when we set up the game, we drew from the infection deck and randomly the various viruses got spread across the world. But at setup, we realized that there is a lot of yellow that's on this board. And we know that we need to get rid of these viruses as quickly as possible before an outbreak occurs and we can potentially lose the game. So I think my first objective that I'm going to have with my dispatcher lady is to go and try and tackle these yellow cubes as best as I possibly can. Now I have got my different movement actions. Remember, I can drive, I can ferry, I can direct flight, I can do all of these various things. And looking at where I am located, I have got no cards that's going to give me any ability to do direct flights that's going to be of any benefit. Johannesburg will fly there. I don't want to go towards Delhi. If I can get to Essen, I can charter a flight. I think I'm just going to be moving straight forward. So I've got my 4 actions to do. My first action would be to move to Miami. My second action would be to move to Mexico. And then my third and fourth action would be to take the 2 cubes from Mexico and return that to the stockpile. That's my 4 actions that I've chosen to do. Now I've got to draw 2 cards from the draw pile, and I draw a black card for Mumbai and Atlanta for blue, and I hand that to my pile of cards. I still have got 6 cards, so I am still fine. Remember, hand limit is 7. Next step is to do the infect city step. In the infect city step, you're going to be taking these infection cards and infecting more cities around the world. Now, the number of infection cards that you draw is dependent on this infection marker. At the moment, it's here by the number 2 because that's where we started. So I've got to draw 2 city cards, and each city will get 1 infection come out. My first one is yellow, Johannesburg, which means another yellow cube is going to go to Johannesburg. I do need to remember that this is becoming a lot of yellows on the board. And another way that you can actually lose in Pandemic is if you have to place an infection cube on the board because you drew an infection card and there's no more cubes to come out, then you can also lose. So we really have to tackle these yellows very urgently. And my next card is a red card, which goes to Ho Chi City. Right, now that's the end of my dispatches round. Next, you will go clockwise. You always play clockwise. And the next person's turn is the researcher's turn. So researcher is in Atlanta, and we are targeting all of these yellows. But again, it's very difficult for her to get down there very quickly. I am, however, very worried about these blacks that I've got over here because remember, if another card, infection card, comes out that puts another black cube on this stack of 3, that will cause a city outbreak. So maybe seeing that I've got a Cairo card, I'm going to use the direct flight option, and I'm actually going to hand in my black card so she can fly directly from Atlanta to Cairo. That's one action. She's got 3 actions left. Next, she's going to move towards Riyadh, which is the second action. Third action, she's going to take 1 cube, and there's nothing else much you can do. So fourth action, she'll take another cube out. So that's 2 cubes down for her for Riyadh. That's her 4 actions. Next, she has to draw 2 city cards. So she's going to draw 2, which is Algiers and Osaka. This is quite handy because as you can see, she already has 4 red cards. And remember, you cure these viruses by handing in 5 cards. So if she can get another red card, that will actually allow us to cure red. And I see that my dispatcher has a red card. This is where her special ability is actually going to come in quite handy. Remember, one of our actions in our action card was that you could share knowledge, but you both had to be in the same city, and it had to be the same city, the card that you were going to share with each other. Well, the researcher's ability overrides that. The researcher ability says, as an action, you may give any city card from your hand, and you must both be in the same city. Ooh, in parentheses, it says, all the player can take. Note, so you can give or take from your hand any city card, but you both must just be inside the same city. So if I can get both my dispatcher and my researcher into the same city, my dispatcher can give or my researcher can take this red card, which will give her 5 cards to be able to cure that virus. That is very important. Right, so she's just drawn her 2 cards. Now we got to do the infection stage, and we're still on infecting 2 cities only. So I'm going to flip the first 2 cards over. First one is Tokyo. Each one only gets 1 cube. Tokyo gets 1 cube over there. And my next one is Montreal gets a blue. Montreal gets a blue. That's the end of my researcher's turn. Let's move over to dispatcher. Now, we just said that we wanted to end in the same locations. Dispatcher is down there, but Johannesburg is giving a problem. So I'm actually going to try and get towards my researcher. So I'm going to hand in my Johannesburger card, fly to Johannesburg. That's my first action. Second action, cure the cure. Now I've got 2 actions left, and I'm going to move to close up to Cairo as I possibly can. So that would be another 3 and 4. That is the 4 actions that my dispatcher can take place. Next, she's going to draw her 2 city cards, and she's going to draw Paris, and she's going to draw, oh dear, an epidemic. Okay, now epidemics come up, as you see, randomly through the game. Remember, we shuffled them in the beginning? This makes the game harder. This intensifies the game. And there's 3 steps that you have to follow on the epidemic card. So step 1 is increase the epidemic. Move the infection marker forward by 1 space. So my infection marker is going to move up 1. Fortunately, those are also 2, 2, 2s. Only the 3s and 4s start a little bit further down. So not too much of a crisis there, but it's getting there. Second phase is I have to infect. I draw the bottom card from my infection deck, look at what it is, in this case it's St. Petersburg, and place 3 cubes on that city. So St. Petersburg will get 3 blues. And this card goes onto my discard pile. Third step of the epidemic is intensify. I shuffle this discard pile of cities, okay, which was the cards that originally introduced all the viruses across the table. I take these and I shuffle them and I place them back on top of this draw pile. Now, this is where outbreaks can occur, because if I had to draw an infection card where there are cities with 3 cubes or not, an outbreak can take place. So let's hope that that does not happen. This epidemic card gets discarded, and before it's the end of my turn, I still have to do the third stage of the game, and that is to do the infections. So I've got to infect 2 cities by drawing the infection deck over. And the first one is Hauchi City, which is going to get a red. Fortunately, there's only 1 other cube there, so no outbreak takes place first. And the next one is Tokyo. And Tokyo also has only 1 red at the moment, so another red comes out there. Now it's the end of the dispatcher's turn, so we move back over to the researcher. Remember, we want to try and cure a disease, so the researcher needs to get to that red card that is over there. First thing she's going to do is she's going to move. She moves 1 action closer. That's 1 of her 4 actions. Her second action is to take, because it's her special ability, take the red card in from the dispatcher, which now gives her her 5 reds. So now she needs to get to a research station in order to hand it in. If only she could get to the research station to be able to hand that in. She's not going to be able to get there fast enough. She does have an Algiers card, which means she can move to Algiers and fly to a research station, or for that matter, move to Algiers and actually build a research station. But that's going to take up her last 2 actions, which means she doesn't have any more actions to play. It looks to me like that is going to have to be it. And we're just going to have to wait 1 more turn before we can do that cure action. So for her third action, she moves to Algiers, and for her fourth action, she hands in the Algiers card and actually builds a research station at Algiers. So that's her 4 actions. Next, she has to draw her 2 cards, and her first card, oh, it's an event. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Remove any 1 card from the infection deck, discard pile from the game. You may play this between an infection and an intensify step of the epidemic. Oh, that's very handy. So when this infection process takes place, I can actually remove 1 of these infection cards so that it doesn't cause an outbreak where it is where it potentially could outbreak. But I can play this card during the infect and intensify stage. If you remember, on our epidemic cards, we have the infect is step 2 and intensify is step 3. So between step 2 and step 3, that's when I can use this particular event. So I'll just keep this event one side for a little bit later on. Next, I have to draw my second card. Okay, my second card. Oh, it's another event. Awesome. Okay, so what is this? Draw, look at the remainder of the top 6 cards of the infection deck and put them back on top. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. I haven't done the infection stage yet, and I'm going to play this event so I can show you how events happen. Right, so I take my event card and play it out into the discard pile, and this particular event says I get to draw the first top 6 cards. That's 3, 4, 5, 6. I get to look at the various top 6 cards, and I can see what they are. Where is... Ooh, St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg. I do not want this card to come up, because if that comes out, an outbreak can take place over here. What else have I got here that's dangerous? Mexico City is clear. San Francisco. Another one. So these I need to really put down at the end of the game. Lima, no, that's not too much of a problem. Sao Paulo, It's got 2. Montreal has got 1. Mexico City's got nothing. So that's fine. I reorder these according to the threat level that I can see I'm going to be drawing. But it also tells me there's 2 cards coming out where I can potentially have outbreaks. So I need to be very careful. Right, so that was my event card that I played because that's what I drew. I haven't done my Infect City stage yet, so she still has to do that. We're on 2, so she's going to draw 2 cards. The first one is Mexico City. Mexico City gets 1 yellow cube. And the next is Montreal. Montreal gets 1 blue cube. No panic stations there. Now the moves over to our dispatcher. Our dispatcher is there. Our dispatcher is very fast and furiously gathering blue cards, which is quite handy. And she's got a few black cards. We remembered that St. Petersburg was actually a problem, so we need to take care of that. And I think the other one, what was it now? I think it was San Francisco. But let's move to St. Petersburg and see if we can try and clear some space there. So 1, 2 actions up there, and 3, 4 actions. I'm going to take these blues out and move them to the discard pile. So that is my dispatcher's 4 actions. Next, my dispatcher has to draw her card. So we draw her 2 cards. First one is Istanbul. Okay, she's gradually getting blacks and blues. And the next is Kinshasa. Okay, she's on 7 cards, so her 7 card hand limit is reached. She's still fine on 7. Next, we have to do the infection stage for the dispatcher. So that would be Sao Paulo gets 1 cube. Sao Paulo. Oh, we have 3 cubes on Sao Paulo now. And Lima. Lima gets 1 cube. Oh, we have 3 cubes on Lima. Need to deal with these yellow cubes. Right, that's the end of dispatcher. Now the game can move over to the researcher. Our researcher is at a research station. That is very advantageous because now I can take my 5 red cards and hand them in to the discard pile and find a cure for red. Note, this is only finding a cure. You're only allowed to flip it over to the eradicate side once you have now removed all of these red cubes off the board. So if I can succeed in getting rid of all of these reds, then I can flip that over and it could then eradicate red, which means next time I draw an infection card and it's a red, because it's eradicated, no cubes gets placed on the board. That is a bonus. That really helps you if you can get through the game. But it's not a requirement in order to win the game. The only requirement is to find the cures. Okay, and we found the cure for red right now. So that was her first action. Awesome! We have achieved our first goal. Red is cured. So now we just have to get rid of these cities of 3s that's around here and find cures for the other viruses. Researcher still has 3 actions left, but she doesn't have any cards. She can't move with any of her cards. She's going to have to do direct moves. I think the easiest at this point in time is let's go get rid of that last little black token that's over there. So no, second move, third move to re-out, fourth remove the black, and that's gone. Now, because I've managed to get rid of all of the black cubes, doesn't mean that it is immediately eradicated because I haven't found a cure for it yet. You can only flip it to its eradicate side once you found a cure for it. So at this point in time, I've just managed to get rid of all the black cubes, but trust me, more is coming out. So that's the 4 actions that she can do, and she can now draw her cards. The next card is Lima, and one more card is Taipei. Right, now she's got to do an infection stage, which is over there. 2 more cities to infect. And she gets... Oh, St. Petersburg! Oh, thank goodness. I did sort out St. Petersburg. My dispatcher at least cleared it. So I've got 1 more blue cube that comes out. No outbreaks. We're safe. And San Francisco... Oh, dear. San Francisco has 3 cubes and an outbreak occurs. Right, what do we do with an outbreak? Firstly, you have to now put 1 extra disease cube on every single city that's connected to that city. And as you see, San Francisco here is connected to Los Angeles and to Chicago. It also jumps from this side of the board across to the other side to Tokyo. So Tokyo gets a blue, and Sydney gets a blue. Blues all over the world. And my outbreak marker moves down. Now, this is a good point to just mention that If, for example, an outbreak had to take place between these two cities here, you can see both of them have 3. So let's say, for example, we drew an infection card and that made Sao Paulo do an outbreak. Sao Paulo would add, firstly, a cube to the cities connected to it, so to Buenos Aires and to Bogota. But it would also then have to add one to Lagos, all right? Because there's already 3 cubes there, it cannot add one to Lagos. Instead, a chain reaction outbreak takes place, which means Lagos in turn would then infect Kinshasa and this one over here, Khartoum. But it cannot reinfect Sao Paulo again. So you can't have this bounce back between the two. But you would have 2 outbreak moves, one for Sao Paulo and one for Lagos. So you will have 2 outbreak moves down your outbreak track, and Lagos would spread, but it won't bounce between the 2 cities of 3, just to clarify. So an outbreak took place over there, and the outbreak marker is steadily on its way down to the bottom. I think we can beat this game if I have to play it a little bit longer and manage to get the various cards and things going. I've already got black under control. I've already gone and found a cure for red. I have to just watch out for these yellows. But I think we've got this game in hand. What do you think? I suggest you try this at home on your own. Epidemic is one of the most popular cooperative games. It's won multiple awards already. And when you have popular games like this, you tend to find that they keep growing and keep evolving with additional expansions and things that comes out. This is a game with multiple expansions. I've really loved playing it. This is probably my most favorite cooperative game out there in the market. I truly hope that you and your family will have a great time playing this game. Thank you for watching That Board Game Show. See you soon.